Welcome everybody to look at a brand new 4K Steelbook release from Arrow Video, and it is 1995's Desperado. So this is directed by Robert Rodriguez, who also did the likes of El Mariachi, which was the first film in his so-called Mexico trilogy, which preceded this film. And then he also did From Dusk Till Dawn, Sin City, Planet Terror, and then the third film in his trilogy, Once Upon a Time in Mexico. So this is a neo-western action film, clocking in at 105 minutes long. It had a budget of $7 million, so significantly more than what El Mariachi had, but less so than what the likes of Once Upon a Time in Mexico did. But it had a box office return of 58 million, so it's definitely a big success. And it stars Antonio Banderas, who's in likes of The Mask of Zorro, the Shrek and the Puss in Boots series, as well as The Skin I Live In and Assassins, which is kind of interesting to compare this film to that, because that was also released in 1995, had a much higher budget of 50 million, and yet it didn't really prove to be successful critically or commercially either. So, yeah, it does show that someone who was popular in the 80s with their films, Richard Donner, who was the director of Assassins, suddenly gets, overridden by a pretty much an amateur with the likes of Robert Rodriguez. So, yeah, and it also stars Salma Hayek, who was in the likes of both of the Puss in Boots films alongside Banderas, as well as Eternals, From Dusk Till Dawn, and the awful films Wild Wild West and Everly. And finally, it's also got the likes of Joaquim de Almeida, who was in the likes of Clear and Present Danger, Missing, and Fast Five. And in a supporting role, it also has the likes of Steve Buscemi, who I've seen it in 16 other films, most likely heard of him in the likes of Reservoir Dogs. But he was also great in Monsters Inc., Fargo, and The Big Lebowski. And then in supporting roles, you've got the likes of Quentin Tarantino, one of the actors out of the Cheech and Chong films. Yeah, you've got a pretty decent cast all around there. So a shadowy figure stalks a Mexican underworld, traveling from town to town with only a guitar case in hand. However, when El Mariachi has however, what El Mariachi has on his mind is not music, but merciless vengeance. With enough bullets up his sleeves for every bandito in his path, the guitar-playing gunslinger has his sights firmly set on taking down a powerful drug lord, but only love of a local bookstore owner will help the mariachi get out of town alive. So this is easily one of my favourite action films from the 90s, which, considering its small budget compared to so many other action films from the same decade, and yet this has no less thrilling or is no less thrilling or enjoyable or engrossing. The cast is also great. The action scenes are excellent despite the budget. The budget clearly went more to the action scenes than anything else, but that does not mean anything else is left behind. It is well paced. The character interactions are solid. I love the cinematography and editing, which do play a massive role in terms of making the action scenes as great as they are, but also in terms of making the film or keeping the film as engrossing as it is throughout. It doesn't look like a small budget film at all, considering the small production budget. I know $7 million isn't a small amount of money if you gave it to a single person, but for a film, especially a film with this much action, it really does not look like a low budget film whatsoever. The score soundtrack is brilliant, and the writing is mostly on point, especially when it comes to building up the El Mariachi character, which Steve Buscemi does really, really well in his speech that he does to a bartender towards the beginning. So yeah, this steelbook looks absolutely excellent. It is based on the original poster at the end of the day, but it still is a really rather excellent looking steelbook. And then we've got that on the rear because he is an El Mariachi, so he does play guitar at least one point in the film, which is a really rather entertaining scene. And yeah, the 4K itself looks absolutely superb, by the way. And on top of that, the sound is top notch, especially when it comes to the sound of the guns and the explosions. Certainly sounds a lot better than it ever did when I originally watched it well, not originally, but watched it for the last time, which was nearly 5 years ago. So yeah, you get the 4K at the front there and the Blu-ray at the back. Not watch the Blu-ray because I prioritize the 4K when it comes to such a release, but I'm sure it looks pretty damn decent. But the 4K is where it's at. We also get a little booklet. So inside we have your cast and your crew. Then we get Bad Hombre, A Tragic Hero, and The Never-Ending Quest for Freedom by Carlos Aguilar, which is from 2024. Then you got Robert Rodriguez, Rebel with a Plan by Nick Clement, also from 2024, and then About the Transfer. So got a couple of shots from the film there in the front. And then in terms of the transfer, let's see what they've done to it. So it's presented in its original aspect ratio 185:1 with 5.1 and stereo sound. I put it in the 5.1, and yeah, that really did excel the action scenes. And this was restored in 4K resolution by Sony Pictures and has been graded in SDR, HDR10 and Dolby Vision. And the restoration was approved by director Robert Rodriguez, which is always a positive sign, although not 100%, signalling that the film has been done well. Cough, James Cameron cough. And then we've got, on terms of the disc itself, then we've got the likes of original uncompressed stereo audio and the DTS HD MA 5.1 surround audio, like I talked about earlier. So yeah, the sound is what's the bigger improvement with this over the actual picture, because like I said, the sound quality is just out of this world when it comes to the actual action scenes, although you would need a 5.1 surround sound system to get the most out of that. Then you've got optional English subtitles for the deaf and hard of hearing, audio commentary by writer-director Robert Rodriguez, who also produced the film. So he put his own money behind this, and you can really tell because it does look like a passion project in a lot of ways. Then you got Lean and Mean, a newly filmed interview with the writer and director Robert Rodriguez. Shoot Like Crazy, a newly filmed interview with producer Bill Borden. Kill Count, a newly filmed interview with stunt coordinator Steve Davison. Lock and Load, a newly filmed interview with special effects coordinator Bob Shelley. Game Changer, a newly filmed appreciation by filmmaker Gareth Evans, who did The Raid, which is another fantastic action film. 10 More Minutes, Anatomy of a Shootout, an archive featurette narrated by Rodriguez. And then you got a Texas opening, and then theatrical trailers on top of all of that. So yeah, a great release overall, to be honest. And now I'm getting to the ultimate question, why I've got this version and not the box set, which has all 3 films included. And that's purely because El Mariachi and Once Upon a Time in Mexico are not in 4K, which seems a really half-assed thing to do when it comes to making a box set. Why have only one film in 4K and then not the other two? Kind of might see that for the El Mariachi, because that was obviously a low-budget film. It's older, but I don't think there's any excuse at all for Once Upon a Time in Mexico not being in 4K. And then there's the other reason, and that's because Once Upon a Time in Mexico is nowhere near as good as this or El Mariachi, to be honest. So yeah, bit downbeat really to have not all 3 films in 4K, and yeah, and although they've done a great job with this film, it would have been nice to have them to have done the same for the other 2 as well. So that's the main reason I didn't get the box set at the end of the day. Yeah, but still, this is a great release, and yeah, it's just a shame that the box set isn't as comprehensive. I know it is in terms of the extras and all of the physical extras that you get with it as well. But again, like they did with the Chucky film series, they didn't have the 4K film for the first film and only put out a really old Blu-ray of that in replacement of that film being on 4K, unlike the other films in the series. And again, yeah, just feels really, really half-arsed on Arrow's side to not put a whole box set out on 4K rather than and just only putting the one or some of the films out on 4K instead. So yeah, that's the main reason why I got the Steelbook. But the Steelbook itself looks excellent. The film itself is presented really rather nicely in terms of the 4K and in terms of the picture and the sound. Got a nice little booklet, and yeah, you got all of those extras on the discs as well. So yeah, all in all, this release of this film is great. I wouldn't personally recommend the box set though, considering it's a lot higher in price, and at the end of the day, you're only getting probably an older Blu-ray in terms of Once Upon a Time in Mexico at the very least. So yeah, but nonetheless, if you have seen this film before, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.